And just before we get started, as a note to everyone, there's going to be a slight change to the agenda. Congressman Jolly is going to be calling in directly, so we're going to hear a federal citizen. We're going to begin with that first, and then we'll go to Ray Robinson, who will call in after that.
What is the meeting? You know? The main people are joining the line. Hello. Any conference call?
This is Jen at Congressman Jolly's office. How are you doing?
Oh, hi, Jen. How are you?
Good morning.
And this is Steve Palmer with Advanced Services.
Hello, Steve.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hey. Good morning, David Jolly.
Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, let's go ahead and begin. We're waiting on one more committee person for quorum, but we can hold off on action when they get here. Meanwhile, we'll go ahead and get started with updates. If we could go around the room real quick with introductions so that the Congressman and Steve and Jen know who's in the room. We'll start with
Phil Johnson, City of Clearwater, and Chair of PSTA.
Doug Beavis, Mayor of the City of Oldsmar.
Legislative Chair Darden Rice.
Janet Long, Pinellas County Commission.
Brad Miller, CEO of PSTA.
Harry Glenn with Vanscoy.
Chris Olson with Ray Robinson.
Before we begin, first of all, I just want to start with a sincere and heartfelt thank you to Congressman Jolly. As you see in your packet, Congressman Jolly took the lead in putting together a letter that was delivered to Bill Schuster, who's the chairman of the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. And this was a Tampa Bay delegation letter for a request for improvement from the FTA. And I just want to thank you, Congressman Jolly, on behalf of PSTA, the residents of Pinellas County, and our PSTA riders, how greatly we appreciate you.
Very happy
Good morning, Congressman. This is Brad. The first informational item that I'm hoping you can cover is perhaps you might be able to give the committee a brief update on all of the things that have been going on in the last 2 weeks in Congress with the transportation bill. And Harry is here, and Steve on the phone also, I'm sure, can fill in anything else. But again, as Darden said, thank you very much for shepherding, and tell us how you're shaping up.
Sure, you bet. And thank you for asking me to be on the call this morning. I appreciate it. You know, I often say we're all in this together, and transportation is one of those areas. We obviously face tight fiscal constraints, many of them with strong mayors, but it is about making sure that our priorities advance within those gaps. So let me give you a quick update on where we are. It's budget season, which means facility season. Vehicles for transportation, most of you all are aware of, at least when you come roads and highways. We have the annual appropriations process, the annual budget process, which is a discretionary process. And we have the multi-year authorization bill, which when people talk about getting a long-term transportation bill, they're talking about the latter. They're talking about the major authorization bill that historically has been about a 6-year bill. So let's start with the first one, with annual appropriations. You know, this is the fiscal year appropriation cycle, October 30th. The House and the Senate have concluded their initial draft approval at the committee level of the transportation budget for FY16. There are wide differences, both in transportation, but also in every other agency. And we are coming up into September, where you're going to hear about government shutdown and so forth over issues that are largely extracurricular. But one of the issues that will force this conversation about keeping the government funded is actually the top line cap. we have set into law through the Budget Control Act a top-line budget number that cannot be exceeded. There are many on the aisle that are pushing to lift that cap to get any agreement on how we settle out this year's annual appropriations bills. So that will have to get worked out in September, one way or another, and it always does get worked out. Hopefully, without a government shutdown, which I would never support. Let me highlight a couple differences between the House and Senate bill that are important to PSTA. And I know if you want to get granular, Harry and Steve time going through some line items. But let me highlight two. It's a bit of a mixed bag between the House and the Senate. One of the areas where the House is really good, and I'll tell you, the House FTA is about 1% below last year, again as a result of the discretionary budget caps. But in terms of FTA, which are the account where PSTA would see opportunities for funding, the good news in the House bill is there's about $350 million, which would likely be ineligible for some of the bus rapid transit plans that PSTA would have. Now there's $350 million in the House. In the Senate, there is only $30 million, so a wide discrepancy there. When we move to programs like Tiger, it's reversed. There's $30 million in the Senate, and there's only $100 million in the House. And so all of this, as you know, who have been in the process for a while, all this will have to get reconciled through a conference committee. The first thing before anybody will go to the table is this top-line leadership discussion between Republicans and Democrats as to what the top-line funding level will be for the federal government. That's where we are on the annual side. On the multi-year side, some of you have likely seen that the Senate recently passed a multi-year transportation bill. The House passed one of only a few months. So let me tell you kind of where we are there. You all are well aware of the current challenge bill is on the revenue side. Most of the programs, most of the new authorities have been worked out in terms of what would be in a multi-year bill. Most of the formulas are worked out. They're the same are worked out. The issue is on the revenue side. The declining revenue from the federal fuel tax creates a shortfall of anywhere from $13 to $15 billion a year. Now understand, $15 billion out of $50 billion program, so it is a large chunk. That's not occurred. How to cover that delta is what has held up the multi-year highway years. I will tell you, possibility that the fuel tax gets increased in this Congress. It didn't happen under previous Congresses controlled by the other party. There is no political appetite to raise the federal fuel tax. So the challenge is, where does the other revenue come from? Where is it realized from? It has forced the House into a series of short-term bills, and I will be honest, the last one I voted against because I said some of us have to come together and say it's time for us to govern, to get a final multi-year bill on the floor, let the House work its will, but these short-term fixes are having disruption to transportation projects. It's time to finally pass a multi-year bill and decide where we're going to recognize the revenue. The Senate passed what they call it's only 3 years of funding, so honestly I have no idea how they get away with calling it a 6-year bill if it's only the first 3 years of funding. So let's say they passed a 3-year bill. They recognize revenue through sales from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and from changing Fed payments, Federal Reserve payments to large banks. The House has shown a little bit of appetite for that, but what the House Strategic Petroleum Reserve is on short term. The big question on being able to realize sufficient revenue is whether or not you get broad-based tax reform. You've heard the conversation about repatriation, which would be allowing the onshoring of offshore corporate at some type of discounted tax rate that businesses are willing to accept, but then it funds a multi-year highway bill. At the end of the day, the Senate passed a 3 to 6 year bill, the House passed a 5-month bill. When we came home for August, we agreed to a 3-month extension, revisit this shortly after we get back after Labor Day. But we're going to face this thing, and shame on the House if they don't come up with a revenue mechanism or the ability to recognize revenue for the bill, because that is the final stumbling block and it's an issue that we should resolve. I'll tell you on that, as I mentioned, having voted against the latest short-term bill, the number of members that are likely to on the Republican side of the aisle are growing. There has been some conversation of 10 to 20 of us sending a letter to leadership saying voting yes on short-term bills. So before you bring forward another short-term bill, you better make sure you have the votes from somewhere else. We have not yet deployed that letter. It is something that probably is under strong consideration because there's sufficient frustration within Congress, just like there is at PSTA and other transportation authorities, that Congress can't get its job done. That's pretty much the update. The Schuster letter, I appreciate you mentioning that. That was the entire delegation, and it was a letter asking very directly for the chairman, as he goes to a multi-year bill, to ensure that bus rapid transit is sufficiently funded, and whatever the top line number is that they finally come up with.
Great, thank you. And Congressman, we've had a couple of more committee members join us since you've been speaking. We've been joined by Pinellas County Commissioner Pat Gerard and our PSTA Diamond.
Very good. Good morning, folks.
Good morning.
Morning.
Jan.
Yes, Congressman, this is Janet Long. Do you have any idea philosophy is from the leadership that think a three-month solution is going to get us anywhere? That doesn't give our agencies any certainty by which. I mean, what do they?
So House leadership wanted really to work the legislative process to identify the pay for us, where the revenue comes from. The Senate rightly has said no more short-term bills. They passed their 6-year bill. The Senate said we're not going to sign a 5-month bill. We want to keep the momentum going on a multi-year bill. So the Senate forced the House into this 3-month posture. So it is more a resignation by the House that the solution quicker rather than later. I think it's a good thing that it got crammed down to 3 months, because if it had been 5 months, we'd be getting towards the holidays and Washington would decide to look the other way. We have a real issue here I will say my side of the aisle, it's both sides of the aisle, because as typical Washington, we dig our heels in on both sides and refuse to fund the solutions. But look, my side of the aisle has the majority. It is our responsibility to identify the pay for us for a multi-year transportation bill and solve this once and for all. There's a way to do it. Repatriation can get you several years worth of funding for transportation. There's momentum there. Paul on Ways and Means and leadership, their hesitation on picking out just one type of tax reform, repatriation, is that then they lose the momentum for broader tax reform that they're hoping to achieve. But at the end of the day, those are just excuses. Bottom line is we've got to get this done. I'm glad it got crammed down from 5 months to 3 months, because it forces us to stay at the table and more strongly consider the Senate bill.
Well, I appreciate that, Congressman, and I also want you to appreciate very much your efforts to try to put this letter together to send to the leadership to force the issue to a solution. And I would urge you strongly to go ahead and send the letter. What do you have to lose? They're not anyway.
I wanted to get sufficient numbers, right? If 5 of us it's thrown in the trash can, but if 25 of us, then you've got a voting block. And look, here's the important thing that to talk about macro when it comes to transportation. One, there is a to attend to transportation, whatever your view of government is, if it's small government, medium, or large government. We have a responsibility to respond to the administration of that level of government. And so we can have a House-passed Republican bill that is still responsible for transportation. That's what I'm asking my colleagues to do. The other important left off the table is what this means for the private sector economy in Pinellas County, the Tampa Bay area, and the state. You know, the truth is, though it is federal funds, as many of you all know, it ends up being contracted out to private sector vendors to do the actual road construction work, the highway construction work. And so just as PSTA and other transportation authorities remain frustrated, those in the private sector community right there in Pinellas County continue to remain frustrated as well at a Congress that ultimately increases the cost of transportation projects to a short-term bill instead of a multi-year bill. It is the efficiency of the private sector, and your government fails to implement that efficiency in the way we manage our budgets.
Good point.
Any other questions this morning?
We just got joined by, who has a comment.
Good morning, Congressman.
Hey, dude.
Sorry for my partner, I had to drop my kid therapy, ACL surgery. The mindset is not long-term funding. They don't look at the cost savings when they do projects and do budgets. Is that what you're saying? Is that what I'm hearing?
Again,
I'm saying, so they don't look at the long-term process in transportation and the savings for budgeting to do stuff and get things under contract while the prices are low? They don't look at that when they're doing budgeting and cost savings and talking about saving money for the taxpayers and tax cuts and all that?
Counselor, that's far too reasonable to accept that type of analysis.
Funny.
It is, look, this is the frustration, obviously, and you can hear some frustration in my voice this morning. This goes, we talked about the annual appropriations multi-year.
Right.
This concept is similar on the annual appropriations process as well. Listen, every time we fail to meet the fiscal year deadline and we go to install a continuing resolution or a shutdown, it actually costs the government up. It ends up costing more taxpayer dollars. Efficient. If we can attend to the efficient, responsible governance responsibility that we have, we do drive out some of the long-term costs. We create lower-cost projects. Transportation is a perfect example of that.
Right.
You know, consider, for instance, the gentleman in Palm Harbor who handles major construction projects. He does them in McDill. He has road projects throughout the Tampa Bay area. What he pays for equipment, the ability to purchase equipment, the ability to depreciate long-term, and then how that is reflected in his bids to government. If he has a multi-year, 5-year revenue stream that he knows he's been awarded a contract on and has to work for, he is able to more readily and stably procure the equipment he needs, depreciate the equipment he has, and build into the price more certainty that he is offering the government, compared to the 3-month stints where it's up and down, and ultimately when it comes time to projects, his procurement costs, his startup costs are so much higher than they would be if we had transportation funded without any disruption. The short-term disruptions are real. They absolutely are, both on the transportation authority side as well as in the private.
That makes too much sense.
So, Congressman, is there something we can do here to help?
Well, look, I would say the top line message, regardless of where you come down on funding levels, is to impress upon the delegation, both Senate and House, Republican, Democrat, the importance of a long-term, 6-year authorization, getting our work done, and then getting the transportation annual appropriations bill wrapped up as soon as possible. September 30th is when we should have it done. We will not end up having it done by September 30th, but encouraging the delegation to reach a deal and get it done. And then, to the extent PSTA has specific interest, there's disparity between the House and the Senate. So I would suggest making it known. You know, I understand Tiger, both past and going forward, but more importantly, some of the new starts with FTA or busted rapid transit and others. There's a big delta between the House and Senate, so depending on where PSTA comes down on what they believe is the level, it's important to engage and make sure the delegation understands what the interest is within PSTA.
Congressman, one of our federal legislative priorities that we will likely be adopting today is to look at the Small Starts application for the St. Pete BRT project. Do you have any comments or any specificity, anything that we should be on the lookout in regards to that priority?
Well, that is a line item as well.
Yeah.
And so I don't know this morning where the disparity is between the two. I do know it's attended to in the House bill, making sure there are funds available for the small starts. So I would include that among the line items to determine, what is the funding level that you are advocating for, so that you are not eligible and there's sufficient funds to cover whatever application you might have. So I would suggest put that into the conversation between you and the federal affairs team about what is the position of the SBA in terms of funding level for small starts. When you arrive at what that decision is, then bring it to me, bring it to the rest of the delegation, and let us get to work to advocate.
Congressman Jolly, thank you again. This has been so useful to us. Thank you for your time. Your candidness, your insight, your engagement on this issue with us is tremendously valuable, and we can't thank you enough for your time.
Well, I appreciate being with you this morning. Stay in touch with us. Let us know. Look, our job is to give voice to everybody in the community, and that includes transportation priorities. So let us know what we need to be doing. We'll do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
sir.
Thank you.
Did we want to cover anything else on the federal side before we move on to talking about state priorities?
Well, I would think it would be appropriate, now that we have a quorum, for us to take a look at our federal priorities, and for the committee to make a recommendation on those priorities that are in your packet.
It's on the last page of our packet. It's on the back page.
That way, then we can cover the state altogether
Okay.
next.
Sounds like a good way to move forward.
I'm just wondering if you wanted to comment.
Now that we have, now that we have quorum, is there any public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll come back to the minutes. So, last page on the federal legislative priorities, and you see that we have two. One is the increase in bus discretionary funding, and the second priority is to pursue the line item, a small starts application for our Central Avenue BRT project.
Mr. Chair, I would say, as the Congressman noted, the one additional item that we might consider a position that the board supports Tiger funding, continue. Tiger is an acronym that I can't remember what it stands for, but that is I think 4 or 5 years. It is federal money that is awarded by the DOT on a competitive basis for any transportation project. It's one of the few pots of money that Congress has decided can be for any mode. So roads, transit, any surface transportation, I think is defined. Florida has not been very successful in getting, but PFTA has submitted applications for our Farebox project in coordination with the region in the past, and I know that Pinellas MPO has submitted projects cutting the national amount of money in the Tiger program. As Congressman Jolly just said, the House Appropriations Bill did, to $100 million across the country is, in my estimation, not even worth funding it at all. I mean, $100 million, there are projects that are submitted for new Mississippi River bridge crossings that are billions of dollars. And $500 million at the Senate is also woefully underfunded. I think I saw an email maybe from you guys that $9.8 billion worth of projects were submitted for consideration this year, when I think the amount was maybe $500 million. in the future, no doubt, PSTA, and I think there's an effort under to coordinate with the MPOs, with our friends across the bay in Hillsborough, on these Tiger Grant applications. Not all submitting 10 and competing against ourselves, but maybe we come up with a way that we can locally prioritize and put our weight behind certain projects and be more competitive. I think we should weigh in that we support at least maintaining the current Tiger Grant program. Really, that comes down to sort of in some ways, a philosophical argument, which I think the congressman actually is in favor of, where that's a federal source of funds that is then competitive at the local level, and the local government gets to decide how those funds are distributed or spent, or at least applied for. So that would maybe be something to add.
Specifically, would that be to support previous funding levels for Tiger?
Yeah.
Which was, what was it?
$500 million.
For us, 500
No,
million?
no, for the nation, $500 million.
No, but I'm saying, what is our particular ask?
The legislative priority would be to support maintenance or increasing in Tiger Grant funding.
No, I hear you, but in terms of PSTA or the region, what is the amount of money that we want?
PSTA and HART and some of the smaller transit agencies have submitted a Tiger application for $10 million.
Okay, and the reason that I think that's important, if I might, Madam Chair, is in conversations that I've heard or been part of over the last year, it seems from the federal perspective, Harry, perhaps you can weigh in on this from your approach, that we are an opportunity because we don't coordinate the effort and work as one entity in the Tampa Bay region. And so in terms of this particular effort, wouldn't it be smart for us to figure out a way to all come together on the same page in terms of...
Well, on that note, I believe that HART submitted the Tiger application for the farebox, regional farebox system. So that kind of went out on HART letterhead rather than PSTA.
Right.
But that was one example of where we collaborated on the Tiger.
So, but then I understood that didn't the MPO also go after one?
Right, the completion of the Pinellas Loop Trail.
Divides us a bit.
It does.
Well, it's where we probably need to work on our...
Yeah, and to that end, do we have that meeting scheduled yet? That joint meeting with the MPO?
With the MPO.
Well, yes, we are. I have a meeting scheduled to meet with the executive director. I already have met with him before. He knows it's an effort. The whole region knows that this is a major that is going on to try to come up with a way to prioritize the projects and to have the region get behind one project. In the past, there have been 10 projects from Brandon to Pinellas that have been applied for by different groups. And anyone can apply. And we have been competing somewhat against ourselves. We're really competing on a statewide basis. Last year, only one project was approved in Florida, down in South Florida. This year, we did a little bit better by trying to coordinate with the MPO. And we agreed, PSTA agreed not to submit the project, so that the only project from Pinellas County would be the MPO's trail project. But then, since ours was a regional project, HART agreed to submit it. That was steps, perhaps an improvement. The Tampa Bay, there's a group called the TMA, which is Transportation Management Area, which means the Pinellas, Pasco, and Hillsborough MPOs are now getting together monthly or quarterly. and they're coming up with a priority list, a top 10 list. I think it has 10 priorities. Our projects are on the top list, and at least my estimation is I see that taking the lead maybe by next year, perhaps even, on coordinating these Tiger grants. It requires all to have a reason to get along and to agree. If your project is not if your favorite project is not selected to be the one application, are you, the mayor of Oldsmar or Tampa or whatever, going to be willing? You're perfectly willing to submit an application on your own, and that remains to be seen. But there is an effort to all try to work together.
So do you have thoughts on that, Harry?
Well, I think certainly to get an area together behind a project is good. I mean, particularly when you have 5 members sign your letter to Chairman Schuster. It's a bipartisan letter. 5 members of Congress is a large delegation. That's larger than more than half members of Congress representing an entire state, let alone one area like Tampa Bay. So clearly, if you can get the MPO to prioritize, it's helpful when you go to the delegation. Then they're all behind one project. The county's applied for the bike trail project. It's the 3rd time around for them, so that was a priority, I think, for the county. I don't know. And last year there were, I think, for the current round there were 625 applications. Last year there were 72 funded. So it gives you an idea what the competition level is like. As Brad said, only 1 was funded from Florida. I think the highest number we've had in 1 year is 3. Some years we've had none. So,
And the project from Florida got bumped to the top because it has to do with the Everglades, and it was in a rural area, but even more weight as an application at the top.
correct.
We're obviously not dealing with rural areas here. Originally.
And one of the things we found with the county is I think in going through the process several times, they've improved their application. I think they've become more competitive and their score has gone up each time. So I think even if the fare box wasn't funded this time around, I think that going through the process will help them improve the application. So if the county was fortunate enough to get bike trail funded this year, maybe that frees up an opportunity for you as a group to go together for the fare box project next year. I don't know how it's going to play out, but and that's why I think on your list of Tiger funding, if the conference agreement only funds Tiger at $100 million for the whole nation, it's going to make it very difficult to compete for those funds. $500 million too, but at least that's the level we've been at the last few years. So I think clearly working together, that's one of the great opportunities for this community is to work together as a community, and I think you'll get bipartisan support.
So, being mindful of time in our agenda, have we discussed this sufficiently? Do I hear a motion that we would support restoring the Tiger grant funding to previous levels or to the $500 million level as a 3rd federal priority for PSTA?
I was trying to discuss it. I was waving at you. I'll wait and do it.
I'm recognizing you now, Commissioner.
Okay.
Newton.
Well, to Janet's question, we took a trip down to Miami. Brad, myself, I went on behest of Tampa Regional Planning and PSTA. We went down with Congressman Micah, and that was way back then. They had 3, I think, billion-dollar projects coming out of the ground. We also had a luncheon where they had every organization, every entity sitting around the table marching to the same beat. One heart, one beat. And that was years ago. And we're still here with this regional planning with everybody having 10 number 1s. And you keep hearing about South Florida getting funded. I don't know why we didn't mimic or duplicate what they were doing for his organization as it'd be competitive to go after these grants. Mike said the same thing. You've got to have the whole community, the whole region going in one direction. And that has never happened here in Tampa Bay. Never. And I don't see that happening in the future, but they got together down south, and they're doing it. We saw it firsthand. We saw the projects. And you keep hearing about one got funded in Florida, and it was in South Florida. I mean, there's no coincidence. I mean, it's unfortunate, but they bring out home the big projects. Majority of the money's there. When their applications come up, they probably get ranked higher than anybody. because they're already there. As to the funding, I think it needs to be increased. The problem you have is, it sounds like way more projects than money, number one, and then, being on a competitive level where you're ranking them by who got what before, if you're not in that number, I don't get that. I mean, you can keep trying, but, I mean, there again, like you said, any mayor or any municipality can go after their own. But until you get a group where everybody's gonna agree that this is the entity, this is gonna be number one this year, may not be in St. Pete, may not be in Oakmont, may not be in Dunedin, Clearwater, Tampa, but this is what we're gonna do. I don't see us benefiting going forward. We talked about this on regional planning years ago. And here we are today, here in 20th City, still talking about it. But only one area couldn't fund it. I mean, I think we should look for increased levels of funding. And also, I would go after, I brought a bunch of showed some of it. I got some slideshows and whatnot. They're doing the 3 Ps. A lot of that's going on with the tunnel project, Inland Mobile Center, and the some of the transit, educating lanes. And try to mimic what they're doing. I mean, you know, we can't even get added to a list for bus replacement money for PTO. You know, I mean, we can't even get on the list. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, we're trying, but I'm showing you where we're at today. As we talk about going forward and being on one heart, one beat, it's hard. Locally, we're not doing it. In the city, in this county.
Practically, it's significant that we do have upcoming joint meetings with MTO and with HART. That seems to me, in the time that I've been on PSC the last few years, is a different from the way we've done business in the past.
My take on that, Madam Chair, is that you can meet, but if they're not there with a clear conscience of we need to move together to get something done.
Your point's taken very well,
They're
but
just
it starts
meeting.
with a meeting. You want to make that a motion?
I would make a motion. Go ahead. Funding. I would recommend support increase in funding, because the minimum you'll get what they gave you. If you go after what they got, they may cut it. So I would ask for an increase in the Tiger Grant funding. I would make a motion that we do that. We can add it. You want to add it to these 3, Madam Chair? You're talking about just that one. You have 2 more on the list. What are you looking for?
Specifically, I was asking if we wanted to add support for the Tiger Grant funding. The third priority to add to the 2 that we already have submitted on.
I would make a motion that we add the third one as support for increased tax grant funding. In my motion.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Could I ask a question?
Yes.
Increase over 500 or increase over 10 million? What I mean,
Increase from current levels will be over 500.
North of where it's at.
I'm just trying to clarify the motion. So it'd be increase over the current.
Is it our ask or is it the budget? The Tiger Grant funding, I guess, is federal. And my motion is to support an increase of the federal funding.
Could it be worded that we support the restoration to the dollar level and then add a couple of sentences of how that's adequate and we would support stronger funding than that, but recognizing it's kind of difficult in this budget atmosphere?
I support that.
That's fine.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So just to clarify, we adopted our federal legislative priorities, 3 priorities. Thank you.
And I just have one comment before we turn off on that. I think it's great that we now have a federal affairs team, and, you know, these types of calls are very helpful in terms of shaping this. And I just want to understand, I mean, I think this needs a little bit of wordsmithing, and I don't want to spend a lot of time in the meeting wordsmithing it to death, but, you know, I think it would be if somebody gets the sheet to know, to Commissioner Lung's point, exactly what it is we're asking for, exactly what it would do, and exactly how many, or how much money, or over how much time period we're looking for support. And I don't think this is there yet, is my point. I mean, I think that, like, for instance, let's support an increase in bus discretionary funding. I think there's some ideas that aren't expressed on this piece of paper that are important, you know, that we're asking for that. Replace and modernize our bus fleet and we're seeking a multi-year appropriation to do that for planning purposes. You know, and I think that all those ideas have been discussed this morning. I just want to make sure that whatever the process is going forward, that when we do the piece of paper again, that it will have some more completeness to those thoughts. So that.
Brad, could we have before August 26th so that when the board approves this committee's recommendation, that we'll have a little bit more. Yeah. And could our committee see that maybe in advance of August 26th?
Because I think,
so that we don't get into wordsmithing.
Right, yeah, because I think these ideas are where we want to be. I just want to make sure that they're expressed in a way so that when anybody picks it up, it's clear what we're trying to do.
To Ben's point, do we collaborate with the how we make the ask, or we just give them something to say?
We do now that we have a.
Well, we've only been on, Steve Palmer's on the call with me from our Washington office, and we were hired, I think we came on contract beginning of July, and we came down and visited. Steve and I were both here with Brad, spent a couple hours with Brad in the middle of July, and talked about some of your priorities here, and I think we'd be happy to help.
Well, and that's great. That's why I was
draft this
mentioning
language up for you.
Right, but that's why I was asking, is that kind of makes more sense, because you're the one pushing this rock up the hill, and probably better you know which best way to make that ask. That's why.
Well, we're going to rely on you to help us push this rock up the hill, too. I mean, one of the things we
we're
talked
gonna throw
about
the rock.
some of your folks up in late September, early October, when these things are coming to a head, and making sure that you get in front of your delegation, the Congressman, you get in front of the leadership and the right leadership in Congress to talk about the impact on the community. One of the other items I would add here is we'd like to get some of you all to come up and talk to your delegation and tell them why this is important to you. So it's good for them to hear from you and see you there.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And to Ben's point and Commissioner Newman, thinking that your input in that draft board will help with the language messaging, because especially when we're talking to legislators and congressional people, having the right messaging with regard to where they sit and the perspective that they have when you deliver it is really critical. And I'm not sure that we internally have the right language.
Well, Congressman Jolly sort of gave it to you.
I know, and I
In response to your question, I did too, a long-term, 6-year funding bill to get authorization for, so I think
But
we
Harry can tell
which
us,
was well expressed.
plug that in,
Right.
and under what particular line item or piece of,
Yeah.
we don't have that in.
I think that would be a great help.
Nitpicking.
Yeah,
thing.
no, I'm agreeing with you. It's a good question.
Congressman, he touched on it also, talking about the deltas and the difference between without you saying that.
Yeah, Gray Robinson is going to call in. Sorry.
It was beeping, I don't know if anybody's on.
Well, I got to stop on that tangent. I apologize.
So,
The whole
Madam
point
Chair,
was not to wordsmith it in this meeting, but just to get
It's okay
Harry
with you.
set up with that.
Steve and I will work with together this week that you all can take a look at it, and he
That
can
would be great.
get it back to you.
I don't want to damn the
That
board.
would be great. Thank you. Move on to thank you. That was a great discussion, and thank you, Harry, for being here, and thank you for arranging to have Congressman Jolly. And thank you, Steve.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Great.
Yeah, we were very glad to have you on the line, and thank you for being part of this discussion. It was very valuable.
Yeah, and I will follow up on providing some flesh on the bones to the committee first, and also to try to lock in on a possible visit to D.C. by members of the committee and myself in sometime late September, early October. But as Congressman said, they're doing this 3-month dance, which ends the end of October, and so that would be a good key time.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so moving along to our state legislative agenda, the other outcome of this meeting is for us to finalize and adopt our state legislative priorities. I would like to introduce and welcome Chris Dawson, who is here with us today. He's new on board with Gray Robinson, but not true to transportation issues. And then what we have Robert Stewart calling in.
Robert should be on the line.
Yep, Madam Chair, I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning, good morning. Anyone else on the line?
Hey, Madam Chair, Alan Buskey here as well.
Good morning.
Hello, Alan. Great to have you with us. Great to have you on board. So, Brad, did you want to make some comments before we hand it over to Ray Robinson for an update or lay of the land?
Well, one sort of tactic I'd like to bring up and raise is that the CEO over at Hart and I have been discussing and talking recently, and I've asked them, they're going to go ahead and draft a cover letter, and we send this federal letter that Congressman Jolly sort of spearheaded to our good Senator Latvala to demonstrate that we are working collaboratively as a region. As all of you know, he is very supportive of, just demonstrating that. And Alan, or Ray Robinson will help us with that in getting that to Senator Latvala. So that's sort of back on the federal, but I think it shows the Senator that we're working so closely with Hart now. On the page prior is the draft state legislative priorities that is on your agenda today for you to make a recommendation of to the PSTA board. No doubt with some additional wordsmithing or fleshing out needed, and we can share that with the committee as well prior to the board taking action on this. You can see on page 7 there that at the legislative committee last month, you agreed to add, instead of just one priority, 2 plus a regional priority. In addition to the Central Avenue BRT project, adding, this is for next legislative session in Tallahassee, a second project, express bus service between Clearwater Beach and Tampa International Airport. And then a regional priority that would be the Tampa Bay Regional Fare Collection Project. There's been a lot of discussion at this committee and about these projects generally, although staff has been doing some great work in fleshing them out even in more detail. On the Central Avenue BRT project, both senators at the end of the special session, that they would be supportive of working with PSTA or going with PSTA to the Secretary of Transportation, the Florida DOT, and asking to be appropriated a $1 million grant, which is our ask, for the final design of this project. And we would certainly welcome that. That way we would not have to have this as a legislative priority action that the legislature would have to approve. It could be just approved in a regular. There's some precedence for this. The city of Tampa and Mayor Buckhorn went along with Jeff Vinnick and got $1 million to study changing the Tampa streetcar into a light rail system, modern light rail system in downtown Tampa, and they go to downtown Tampa, and the Florida DOT, not during the session or not with legislative action, but just the DOT gave them $1 million, actually $1.2 million. So this does have some precedent. So we're still going to work that angle. We're also looking at other angles for looking at perhaps, and Cassandra has been doing a great job working with the Florida DOT on looking at ways we might new technology that we would add to this project to make it a pilot project or eligible for pilot project funding. There's different pots that the Florida DOT has for pilot projects, especially that maybe look at making the buses somewhat autonomous, stuff like that. Trying to explore while we still look to the legislature sort of maybe as a last resort to see if this can get funded through the legislature. That's what's going on. On the Clearwater Beach to the airport, this project has somewhat of an asterisk next to it, namely that unlike BRT, which is a fairly standard in terms of a capital dollar, a one-time capital ask to the Florida legislature, $1 million. The Clearwater Beach to the airport project is an operating project.
Recurring?
We need operational funds, approximately $2 million a year to support that project. Running a bus to the airport is an expensive proposition in that you have to run buses frequent enough to entice air travelers to be able to be willing to ride it, and they have to run when the airplanes run, which is pretty much almost 24/7. It is about $2 million a year, much more expensive than the Central Avenue BRT project, and in operating dollars. The Florida legislature, Senator Latvalla's TED committee, doesn't ongoing operational dollars typically. Sense for the state agreeing to fund a certain number of years of a project and things like that. But in my estimation, and in conversations with several state representatives, this is maybe more of the legislature supporting increased operating dollars through the federal DOT, the Florida DOT, that's showing their support for the Florida DOT providing PSTA an operating grant for this project, which the Florida DOT does. They do have operating projects. Our 100X that goes over to Tampa now is funded through a Florida DOT, largely funded through a Florida DOT project. It just makes it a little bit different of an ask. It's not an appropriation necessarily. It's a express. I had a meeting last week with Representative Chris Latvalla, who we asked to be a champion for this project since it's right in his district. And he suggested that maybe, kind of like Congressman Jolly did, a Pinellas legislative a letter signed by all of the delegation would be a start. Would be a start to the Florida DOT, to the Secretary of Transportation, might be a tactic to get this accomplished or get this started. And then of course, we would work with the legislature and explain this to them. But I just wanted to mention that it's a little bit different than the Central Avenue project in that regard. But otherwise, those are two very shovel-ready projects, ready to go. The third project, this regional priority, is the fare collection project that we have been applying for Tiger funding for, and we have talked about that we would continue to seek support from the state as well. The state has funded part of that project already.
Any questions on that? Is everybody pretty clear on that, the differences in funding and operational costs? BRT project and the Clearwater project.
Hey, Madam Chair, this is Alan. I wanted to add one thing to the Central Avenue BRT conversation, if I could.
Please do.
Just to build on what Brad has said on support for that, as well as Senator Latvala, but more so Senator Brandon last time. In our conversation, what he has actually agreed to do, which I believe again shows his level of support for, as he calls them, rubber on the road type project. He's actually said he wants to go with us to DOT, not that he just wants to help set up a meeting, not just in case he supports it. He's actually recommended, and one of the reasons that meeting hasn't taken place yet is for schedule and Brad's schedule and others to try to get, probably during one of the early committees, get some folks at Tallahassee to have a meeting at FDOT, but the senators agreed not only to make the phone call for us to set it up, but also to attend in person with the secretary and whomever else may need to be in that room and to try to talk about the need for the funding through the FDOT budget and not necessarily have to wait on next July legislative development. And it doesn't guarantee it's going to happen, but I think it is certainly brings it to a whole different level if the chairman of the committee is willing to go with us to that meeting. So I just wanted to add that one element.
Well, it seems to me at first blush this would be enormously helpful because, this is, as we keep coming back to the apple, we have to change up our tactics. And definitely having Senator Brandes with us for that meeting would be impressive and would certainly be a great way for him to put his thumb on the scale for this project.
Sure.
Thank you. Commissioner Newton and then Commissioner Long.
Yeah, to that point, the Senate has always been open to rubber on the road versus rails. I think the last session we were up there, Brad and myself, and Matt, I'm going to call you Matt Everson. You're going to punch me. We were up there, we shared the same thing with Senator Latval, that it's a capital investment. However, if this project is not successful, we can always move it. Fixed project, so the capital expense could be reutilized in the region and or the district, and they were very, very open to that. Something else that has come to light is the gentleman who's out pursuing the ferry option from McDill. They were talking about coming in on the south side of St. Pete there, the east side of St. Pete, where Central ends in First Ave, and be able to, when they bring people over, so they can connect to that and get to the beaches also on that BRT. So it's growing, and it's got some more people looking at it. So as to the chair's point, we could be adding stuff to it. So it's not really the same as morphing to what it can be, other than stopping right next to the Tropicana Field. It's a stop right already there on First Avenue. So it's a project that I think that it's going to help transportation options well into the future.
Commissioner Long?
Well, yes, I just wanted to add to the conversation a couple of thoughts, because yesterday at our county commission meeting, there was a component that was referenced in our bed tax money about carving out a piece to address some tourist-related transit solutions. And it occurs to me, when we talk about a $2 million a year operating challenge, that there are an awful lot of stakeholders that would be interested in moving people from TIA over to our beaches. And it was spoken about that we have 4 brand new resorts being built on Clearwater Beach, which will bring another 1,000 to 1,500 people a day back and forth from the mainland over to the beach and out to the airport. And there are new hotels going up, which I did not know, on St. Pete Beach, which is just, again, going to exacerbate the effort to move people from the beaches to the airport. And so perhaps there's a vehicle, and I don't know what it is, so maybe our public affairs people can weigh in to get all of those groups together and talk about, how do we all pull together to make this operating expense not so big of a hill to climb.
I just wanted to comment. I passed this sort of detailed sheet out to you. You see on the bottom the bus has the Visit St. Pete Clearwater logo on it.
That's great.
Thanks to Bob Lasher and Cassandra, they have been working with David Downing and the TDC specifically on this. They are well aware of this project and supportive. We're also working with the Clearwater Beach Chamber, exactly what you're describing, trying to make a coalition together to support this project. Not to mention the airport.
The Gulf Coast beaches, that's a lot of
Yes.
people together.
To that point, when we went up, that's who organized that bus trip, was the beach chambers.
Yes.
And and this is exactly what they were talking about: medical tourism, sports tourism, and they were talking about transit. They had it all laid out, and I think we were just tagging along with them, if I'm not mistaken. So that group is already together. That was their inaugural visit. Again, it's the first time they went up. Yep. And sitting in the Valley, they enjoyed it. They asked them would they come back and share think that'd be an excellent starting point. I was trying to see what the name of that group was. I took a photo.
Beaches Chamber of Commerce.
What was it?
Bay Beaches Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
And they are very excited about this. Beach Chambers,
I think that'd be an excellent starting point.
they're chomping at the bit to help.
Yeah.
Really, it's fabulously well done. Congratulations.
I agree, I love this, this, going back to where I was talking, like full sentences or paragraphs, it really tells the story of
It's a
of
great
the,
messaging.
and I appreciate Mr. Sutsky's efforts, with regard to the BRT project to arrange the meeting with Senator Brandis and the Secretary. I think that's an excellent suggestion, and hopefully it bears some fruit. I think given our current funding challenges, I think we have to be clear when we discuss these types of board level with other people that we're really looking to the Department of Transportation and the state to make these types of projects possible. I mean, I don't think it's possible in our current fiscal situation for us to be allocating, and Brad, you correct me if you disagree, $2.1 million every year toward toward this project, but it has such enormous regional benefit in terms of all the ideas that are on this thing, that I think it's worthy of support from Tallahassee. So I think it's great, and I think it's well presented on this paper.
The idea for this detailed sheet actually came from my meetings with the representatives, Representative Sproles and Representative Bala, both, at your direction. We are getting to them early before, and they are, both of them said that, they're hearing from people and considering what they're going to support for next year. We learned a lot last year about how they get quotas. They don't only, each member can only have a certain number of projects, et cetera. And so they asked to put this together, so the staff has put this sheet together. I have another one I can give you on Central Avenue that we did last year, that we did before. I will say that, we heard some feedback from some representatives that it's a little too wordy. It's too much detail in some sense, so we're, working best as,
Well, it's a
On that note,
one-pager,
Brad,
I mean.
on that note, I would like to ultimately see us put together some type of packet where we could have, like, the Cliff Notes version with the bullet points, but then in the packet, if someone wants to look up and find more information, they can do so, but they can also have it in their office as a resource so that when we do need to recall facts or funding figures, we know right where to get it at our fingertips.
Yeah.
So these are two different things?
One is
Central
Central
Avenue,
Avenue, and one's
Clearwater Beach.
The Tampa Beaches Chamber, they had a nice handout they left with each
that was
representative. And we had our, this wasn't, but the BRT was. This is the Clearwater. Oh, it's coming, okay. The Clearwater one wasn't in it, but they had a page on each subject matter, and it was just straight to the point, and then they had their opinion on what type of words should be put in for the funding, and they just asked that whatever they could do to support the representatives or the senators, let them know. I mean, they were just more of an intro type thing. I like the way they brought all the delegation in. They had them in one room. They brought them in one by one and served them lunch and spoke with them. Thank you. Served them lunch and spoke with them, but it was just like this. It was just one pagers that they could leave and left their stuff with them. I thought that was great. So, but I think that should be the group because they already vested. They already made the connect, and we can go from there instead of reinventing the wheel.
Brad, do you have another Clearwater one?
That was Tampa Bay Beach Chamber.
They set that up.
This is an action item for this committee
Yeah.
to recommend to the board.
Yeah, one of the outcomes from today's meeting is to adopt our state legislative priorities, which is really what you see here on this draft in your packet is really what we did last year. We're providing more information on some updates and strategy and tactics, but I'd like to hear a motion to these priorities.
I would make a motion, but I have one comment. Are these, do we get in line, any feedback from Ray Robinson and Alan on what we're doing locally, like we're doing with our federal lobbyists? Or is it because we already printed, doesn't matter?
Oh, well, those are drafts, and,
Okay, the drafts,
you
okay.
certainly get feedback from them.
I mean, like, to your point, when you say it's a little wordy, I mean, they're up there with these guys.
That was
That was,
Ray Robinson and Alan.
okay, you got that already for them, okay. But it's, that's in their wheelhouse, so I would say we should stay in tune with that too. Because if we're gonna hold them to measurable outcomes at the end of the session, we gotta have them put some ingredients in this cake as we bake it.
Right.
So that way they can have some skin in the game. I make a motion that, all three, Madam Chair, you do it one at a time. Is it, Central Avenue, PRT?
I think the whole page.
The whole page. I would move we, adopt these legislative priorities.
You made that motion, it was seconded. Mayor Beavis?
Yeah, I just, I'm comparing this list and our approach to kind of last year. And last year, we kind of had one, it seemed like we had one bullet in the gun, and, we tried to shoot it to get on the legislative dollars. And it sounds like because of the effort that we're putting forward now and starting earlier, that although it may get in the legislative budget, but that we're meeting with all these different people, as we heard today, and we're talking about, then tell us where to get the funding. If you don't want us to be in that pocket, then where are we? Maybe it's the DOT, maybe, as you said, with the beach thing, maybe it's the TIA and the Tourist Development Council and things. So we have several bullets in the gun that we may not even be part of the legislative budget, but we still may get it. They can help us, but it doesn't need to go through the scrutiny that it did before, so I really liked it.
One question. If we do get an FDOT's budget, is it still susceptible to the line?
Yes.
I'm
Oh, no.
No, that's
Yeah,
great.
Yeah. I'm asking, I don't know, if the resident expert, is that
Right,
right?
the direct grant from FDOT would not be subject to the DO, but if it's in the legislative process, in the budget, it is some, does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to see, my question was, because we've gotten, I guess, things over that just got cut out, but, so that, the grant would be
It would come directly from FDOT, so it would not be.
That's,
the
we're doing it this way. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. All in favor of adopting item 3B in our state legislative priorities?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great, unanimous. Thank you very, very much.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Madam Chair, Robert Stewart here, and I've got to step into another meeting here in just a minute, but I wanted to let you guys know a couple of things. First, let me congratulate this committee and the staff and the work that's been done to get with the members as early as we have, to put ourselves in the best possible position for what is, as Alan referenced, an early session this coming year. And so I think the legwork that's been done since the conclusion of the second session in June and now has put us in a pretty favorable place as we go forward with a lot of oil in the gun, to use that analogy again, some different options. So I think we're well positioned and excited about Robinson. I think we're excited about the work ahead and continue to partner with you guys. One policy matter I wanted to put on this committee's radar. No action required today, I don't think, but just something for you to be aware of. Over in Central Florida, there's been, followed, you may have seen it in some of the news clippings, but Congressman Micah has in recent months, really throughout his time in Congress, but most notably in recent months, about more privatization at links and in transit generally. And there's going to be a piece of legislation filed at the state level, if not today, then later this week, by Representative Broder, that would address not only abortion but privatization efforts at links specifically. So just transit authority. But that's just a piece of legislation to watch. It's one of those things that could easily become a train in the legislative process with other members wanting to have, of what they think is reform at their in their own backyards. And so we'll be tracking that legislation, but I wanted you guys to be aware of it. That at least in some level, Congressman Micah in the Central Florida and a couple of Central Florida legislators will be trying to drive that discussion about can we find a way, in their view, to do transit different or do transit better And in this particular bill, while I haven't seen the final version yet, because it hasn't filed, what I know about it will be somewhat of a board reorganization and then a legislative mandate at more ways about routes or services or other parts of the organization. So just, I put that on your radar because we're going to come in and we'll stay in touch with Brad and with you, Madam Chair, and the rest of the committee about how that looks going forward. But didn't want this meeting to end without at least letting you know it was there.
Thanks for that update. I know going through these legislative sessions, it's always a balance of offense and defense. We do have a question from Commissioner Diamond.
Yeah, Robert, thanks for, and Alan, thank you for being on the call. I just had a suggestion, and I made this suggestion meeting, but I just wanted to make it again today, which is when this comes to the board for approval in our August meeting, I think it would be helpful. Our committee has done a lot of work with our lobbying team to come up with a strategy as to how we're going to present these ideas and advocate for them. And we're obviously paying for that strategy. And part of what I want to make sure that we have is some type of, I think it could even be one page, but some type of short strategy memo from our advocates as to their plan for advocating for these issues in Tallahassee. You know, for instance, Mr. Susky, your idea of coordinating the meeting with Chairman Brandis, you know, and along with members of the PSTA delegation, just members of the board that are not in these meetings for an hour and a half, see the value of the efforts that we're going through to try to get this agenda passed. And I think, as opposed to just in the board agenda, there just being this one sheet, if we could have, you know, our priority list and the nice glossies that you guys have done, and some sort of strategy memo that explains, here's our work plan. On the board feels like, you know, we're being proactive and we're really trying to get value out of all of our resources.
I think that's excellent. In addition to strategy, timeline as well, because these deadlines in these committee meetings, I mean, so much and the deadlines often change.
And then it doesn't all fall on us. I mean, the board meetings are so compact.
Right.
You know, there's so much information that we need to deal with. And there are questions what the legislative plan is, and then it falls on one of us to try to explain in 30 seconds in a board meeting, well, here's our whole plan, which we discussed in an hour meeting, you know, in a committee. It's just hard to do that.
And to our
Commissioner, good thought, Robert, here again. Happy to put pen to paper on that. And I think now that that at least the formal recommendation is going to come forward from this committee to the board for your legislative priorities, by all means, I'd be happy on behalf of our team working with Alan to put together some strategy that makes sense. Brad, why don't you just, if you don't mind, let us know when you need that by for it to be part of the board agenda. This is going to the board in August, and we'll be happy to put pen to paper on that.
Absolutely.
And also, as a follow-up item, when should we see a draft of the Nellis delegation letter to FDOT on the Clearwater BRT project? Would that be a draft we should get soon?
Yes, certainly. I mean, I had my meeting with Representative Bala, and he suggested that. So that's on our work plan as well. And it is a great point that Commissioner Diamond brought up, and it's actually timely because under our revised contract with Ray Robinson and Allen, that's actually a requirement, a written tactic memo from them. So I'll get you the deadlines, and we'll get that to the committee and then to the board.
And the Commissioner Diamond's point goes right along with our new guidance of path forward. We talk about our legislative priorities and partners and going after different resources and different options. So it's right in the same wheelhouse. So that's perfect.
Robert, thank you so much, and Chris, it's great to have you here with us as well. We enjoy working with you, and I'm especially looking forward to working with Mr. Susky, and I'm glad about that new partnership. We embark on a new legislative session together. So,
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last item on the agenda, and I know we're a little bit late, is an informational item just to remind the committee of our good efforts so far, that we want to continue to coordinate, especially on these legislative agendas. So the plan that we discussed at the executive committee previously, and I think at this committee as well, was now that you have recommended this list of legislative priorities for the state and perhaps even the federal, we're going to take this to the PSTA board at your August. You'll see this fleshed out more with more detail on the August 26th board agenda. The executive committee of PSTA and of HART is meeting on August 31st. HART is also kind of in parallel with us. They're doing their legislative priority list that I know will include the Farebox project. It probably will include increased bus funding, include some BRT projects that they're prioritizing over in Hillsborough County. The idea is that on August 31st, the two executive committee meet and discuss what projects might be pulled together from the HART list and the PSTA list that we might work on, and then agree on that, a sub-list, perhaps even agree to support each other's projects, that we, PSDA, would be supportive of a project in Hillsborough, they would be supportive of the Central Avenue project in Pinellas, and then we go hand in hand, me and Catherine, and you all, and them, and up to Tallahassee together, and together. This is, again, the same kind of concept we were talking with Terry and others on the federal side. We work together and show a united front. It's a key tactic, I think, something I know HART is very supportive of, and I think we're working really well together for the first time, really, in that regard. So that's an informational item.
Just a question on that. If we do it jointly, would then that go to our board in September to approve that joint list? Because the executive committee doesn't.
That's right.
Can't really act for
right.
the whole board.
Yes, it would go back to the legislative committee and then to the board again. Great.
One quick item we just need to go back and pick up. We do need to go back and review the minutes and accept the minutes or make any changes. Are there any?
I got a. Go ahead.
Commissioner Diamond and then Commissioner Newton.
I just have one suggested addition. In discussion about the renewal of the Gray Robinson contract, my recollection was one of the things we discussed was, and frankly one of the reasons why I was willing to support it without it being competitively bid at this moment was that because of the legislative and the committee meetings were earlier, that there wasn't really the time at this point to do an RFP, and so I was reluctant about that, but willing to support it with the understanding that we were going to competitively bid it when we got through that session. So I just want to see that idea added in, if that's okay.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I think they look good to me.
I think to add that might be the third sentence, because there's a couple of sentences that start off with Mr. Diamond, so that would be a good place to. I wasn't trying to be funny.
No, I had a lot to say, not me.
Greatly appreciated too. But that would be a good place to insert a sentence to acknowledge that the sped up timeline on the session is why we went ahead with this option to extend it rather than go out for RFP. So who's our worst speaker? Is it Clarissa or is it?
I got it.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Newton.
Yeah, we also have to that point, Madam Chair, is we had a lot of discussion about the entire board when we about the increased amount. But I think the timeline would show that, because we would not have been able to get the stuff we got accomplished thus far, waiting on our RFP to come back. So,
Right.
I just want you to add something. You had Bill Johnson, PSC board member. I think I should have been PSC chair / board member, because he's the chair.
Yeah.
I was just
Where's that?
When you say, also, President,
Oh,
Bill Jackson, say PST, chair/board member, if you want, because he's the chair, I'm just,
sure.
he fought hard to get there, I want people to know who to blame, so. Now move approval of the minutes.
Second.
As amended, or?
Second.
That's gonna,
As
Do
amended.
we hear as amended, approval for the minutes?
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Any minutes are accepted with revision. Okay, any other business?
did you comments on approving the minutes? No public comment.
Well, we did
I'm just
take
asking.
public comment before.
I'm just asking.
Okay, with no further comment, then we'll adjourn the legislative meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
For those members who are here for the upcoming executive committee meeting, perhaps we'll start right at 11.
Brad.
That's like 5 minutes away.
Follow-up, so we don't-